Welcome to Black and White, a conversation with Dan Perkins. It's time to bring all of us together to talk about the issues that concern us. It's time to hear from people who want to deal with only the facts. And it's time for you, as Americans, to re-engage in your right of freedom of speech. It's time for you to join me in the conversation on Blacks and Whites. Welcome back to Blacks and Whites, and joining us today is Stephen Stern, who is a man about my age, but probably even more active than I am. And he's got this fantastic background of shirts, of patriotic shirts. And he's here today to talk to us about what's going on and should be going on in the Republican Party. So, Stephen, thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you for having me. And, we're a lot going on, and we're happy to be here because we can report a lot of stuff that's going on. The main thing is we have to get people active. So we do a thing called precinctstrategy.com. Dan Schultz wrote a book on why people should join the executive and county committees around the United States. A lot of people don't know how to do that. And you go to www.precinctstrategy.com. And what that tells you how to become a committee man or a committee woman in your state. And the Republican Party has 400,000 slots, of which we have between 220 and 240,000 filled. And people ask, well, how come you don't know the exact number? Because, people leave, people join, people get sick, they die, et cetera, et cetera. They also quit because they feel, the elections could be stolen. They don't want to vote anymore. They're sick and tired. So we have 3,000 people. We have rhinos, we have establishment people, and we have the real Republicans, the MAGA people. And around the country, we're trying to move the rhinos out. So we're fighting our own party because, just to give an example, I was just get off the phone with people in South Dakota. This week, they're going to vote to try to stop the Republicans in South Dakota to vote for their offices. And, it's a big fight. It's been on national TV. Mike Lindell, Stephen Bannon, both had people on. And, they're talking about that they're trying to control it. Now, Kristi Noem, who's the governor, we all thought she was a MAGA person because she loved Trump, et cetera, et cetera. But if we find out that she's a big rhino, she's trying to keep control of South Dakota, try to get the MAGA people out, try to keep the establishment people in. So we have a big fight on what's going on. But the good news is that we have a Zoom meeting every other week, and it's called Save My Freedom. And we're welcoming, and we'll tell you how to get there. And we welcome everybody to come. So we just had a big meeting, and how this all got started. About 3 years ago, Dan Schultz got me on the Steve Bannon show, and he's a big supporter of precinct strategy. And a lot of people we ask all around, including President Trump, who I met back in December of last year, didn't know what precinct strategy what it was. So I said to myself, wait a minute, if the President of the United States doesn't know what precinct strategy is, who else doesn't know? So we started to ask Mike Lindell. I called Mike Lindell up cold, and I asked him, do you know what precinctstrategy.com is? He said, no. He said, do I know you? And I said, well, I met you a couple of years ago. And I said, I love your towels. Well, when you tell a businessman you love something of his product, he's going to listen to you. So he usually gives you about 5 or 10 minutes. He got on the phone, and we started telling him what precinct strategy was, just like we're telling your viewers. And he said, wait a minute, let me get one of my girls on the phone. Well, he was on the phone an hour with us discussing it, and he loved it. He said, I want you and Dan on the program tomorrow. We got on the program. He endorsed it right after that. And then he did a very nice thing for us. 2 days later, he said, I called President Trump and asked him to endorse it, but he said he wanted more information. So we got a hold of Liz Harrington, who's Donald's spokesman. And she talked to him. And about a month later, Steve Bannon calls me up, said, you're going to have a conference call here with Liz Harrington, myself, Dan Schultz. We're going to have a conference, and we got something to tell you. So they told me that President Trump was going to endorse precinct strategy back in February of last year, and came out. We endorsed it, and then we started watching him on his shows when he did his rallies. He never talked about it. So it took me about 4 or 5 months, but I got to him, and right 2 days before the election, I got a meeting with him, and we asked him if he would support and talk about precinct strategy at his rallies. So we had 4 of his secretaries there, my wife, my grandson, and Liz, and he did say he would talk about it. So now he hasn't done a rally since then. He's going to do a rally I believe maybe later this month in North Carolina, which is what I heard. So that's going to be fantastic because, you know, when he goes out in front of 50,000 people and he asks people to get involved, and why we say we don't have enough people involved, because if we have 60 million, I'm going to go conservative, we have 60 million Republican voters and we have 240,000 people involved, there's something wrong. It means that a lot of people aren't involved. Now, I will say there is Republican clubs and there's Tea Party and there's this and that, but the organization is in the executive county committees. Now, one of the problems that we have is, you know, you hear a lot of talk about Ronna McDaniels, how they want to get her out, and a couple of people want to run, including Mike, and I'm supporting Mike for the position. I usually don't get involved in these things, but I know Mike's a businessman and he will do good and he will protect the Republican Party. So now we got all this fight going on because how they get elected. There's 168 people that elect the head of the Republican Party. There is 50 states, which the committee man, the committee woman, the national committee man and committee woman vote, and the head of the Republican Party for that state. So that's 150. And then we take our territories and they have 3 votes also. So there is a lot of politicking going around like that because they want to get rid of Ronna desperately. And the reason is nothing's happened in the last 4 years. That's good. So, and, you know, I've called her 25 times, never got an answer back. Now, if I can get a hold of the president of the United States or the former president of the United States, I should be able to get a hold of the person who's in charge of all our executive county committees in the Republican Party. So I called the vice chair, doesn't call back, called the secretary, called the treasurer, nobody calls back. They don't care because all they want is the money coming in and they want to be able to designate where the money goes to and play with the money. So we have a lot of things that we found out. Mike Lindell was on our Zoom and he told us, hey, look, if the Republican Party collects, let's say $100,000, the first 20,000 goes to win red. The back end $20,000 go to somebody else. That leaves 60,000. Well, we lost 40. Mike Lindell says that's never going to happen under me. When we collect the money, we're going to get 100% of the money and we're going to use 100% of the money. Also, the Republican Party doesn't always support all the candidates running. Now, I say if somebody's running, whether you think they're going to lose or not, they deserve as much money or part of the money as well as the guy who you think is going to win in another area, another state. So I happen to work with a girl here, Carla Spalding, that was running against Debbie Wasserman Schultz. They wouldn't even answer her call and she got 0. And that's unfair as far as I'm concerned. If I'm giving my money, I want it to go to everybody. So I'm telling everybody, hey, give it directly to the candidates because those are the ones who need it. And, you know, I get 27 calls a day. The Republican Senate, they want money. The Republican House wants money. Everybody wants money. They all want donations, but we have no control of the donations. So now we're looking into everything. And I think that's very important that we do this. So when I was up with the president or the former president before the election, he actually endorsed one of my candidates, Major Malloy, who was running for Senate in New Hampshire. In Vermont. And I thought that was pretty cool considering here I am just an average guy and he actually endorses someone that asked to. And unfortunately, you know, in a state like New Hampshire and Vermont, it's very difficult to win, but he did it anyway. And I'm very indebted to him. So he asked me what I thought about the election. And I said, well, based upon what I'm seeing out there, it's very difficult to win an election. So I got the bright idea for about, you know, just what I needed, more work. So 2 weeks later, I opened up a Zoom meeting with 40 of the top election integrity people. And that led to one this week with 150 of the top election integrity people. And we bring in a lot of information and some of the things that we want to do. We want to move the election integrity into the precinct strategy. Well, what does that mean? We have many people, and I don't know if everybody knows about Cleta Mitchell and Cause of America and on and on of different organizations in the United States that are working election integrity. And I said to everybody, well, if you're doing one thing and you're doing one thing and you're doing one thing and it's the same and you're spending $6 million on it, what we need to get everybody together. So we're trying to get everybody together. Whether it will happen or not, we don't know, but we're certainly going to make an effort. So my job is to bring people together. I'm not a technical expert on that, but we have Jovan Pulitzer, who you may know, who's a terrific guy and who really knows what's going on. He showed me how the Arizona election was stolen. And we're going to have him do a video of that so people could really understand it, because they're tech guys. And when Lindell put up all his technical stuff in his symposium, a lot of people didn't really understand it, because you're looking at graphs and stuff like that. So we're going to try to make it easy for the layman to be able to understand what's going on. So that's just some of the things that we're doing. And maybe you have a couple of questions that I can answer before we go to the break. So we're glad to do that.
I do have some questions, and we'll have more when we come back from the break. But quickly, if there were 240,000 slots that are filled, out of how many?
400,000.
By comparison, how many empty slots do the Democrats have?
We don't know. You know what I'm saying? At this point, we don't look into that. But they don't work the ground game because they steal the election. Why do they need to work? If you noticed that when Biden was campaigning, he didn't get out of his house, right? He was in the basement. Right. He was talking. They knew they won the election before they started, so they didn't even go on the ground. If you remember, when he had a little rally, there was 10 people there. Well, they never got the people together because they knew what was going to happen. And that's some of the things that, we all saw. We couldn't prove it because no judge would allow us to bring the evidence in, and nobody had standing. But luckily, our guy in Georgia, Favorito, he now has standing. It's going all the way up, I believe, to the Georgia Supreme Court. So he still has a chance. And, that's exciting. Now we're going to see what's happening is going to, I believe, the Supreme Court in Arizona with Kari Lake. One of our guys, which I'm going to let you know, and it's very important. Everybody can get an app called votifynow.org. And why is that important? This gentleman got 11,000 different things sent to his app where there was fraud in Arizona. So he was called in with the lawyers to show all this information. So we're telling everybody to get this app. It's the leading app in the country. And, that's important because we're learning more and more about election integrity, which we're going to change the name to possibly election fraud prevention or election something prevention. We don't like the word fraud. And what our goal is here is to not to go back and find out what happened, but to come up with the remedies. And after your break, I'll give you some of the remedies that we found that we're going to do.
We've been talking to Steve Stern about what's going on in the Republican Party and some of the challenges that he's faced. We'll be right back with him after we take this break. We are Americans, male and female, from many races and cultures from all over the world. One thing above all else is we are patriots who protect our nation and defend, when necessary, our Constitution from attacks both foreign and domestic. Today, as American patriots, we must take back our country from those who want to destroy it and us. We must start by taking back our children and their education. Parents, not union, should be in charge of our children's education. We must be sure that they are taught about the greatness of America and its people. Our children should not be indoctrinated with the belief that parents are racist and are evil and trying to destroy the world. As patriots, we must take back our country from foreign nations who want to destroy us and our way of life. Yes, as patriots, we want America to be first. We want an open and fair trade policy, energy independence, safe cities, and secure borders where we can grow and prosper as a nation of free people. Become an American patriot. Help take back America by voting Republican. We'll be right back. Okay. I'm curious as to when you look at what's going on. You and I talked some time ago about the point that you made about Ronna McDaniel not returning phone calls. I have, for the better part of 2 decades, tried to get involved with what's going on, and nobody would return my phone calls at any level of the Republican Party. And Is it because they don't care? And I want to ask you that question when we come back from the break.
Sure.
I just want to give you the heads up on it.
Gotcha.
Okay, so let's get back in it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome back. And we're talking with Steve Stern about what's going on in politics around the country, especially with what's going on with the Republican Party. And Steve and I had a conversation several weeks ago, and I told him of my frustration when he told me his Ronna McDaniel story about not ever being able to get a return phone call. I talked to him about over the last 3 campaigns, how I couldn't even get state or national campaign offices to ever return a phone call, no matter how many times I called, no matter how many different people I tried. And I wanted to start this segment by asking you the question: why do you think they're that way?
So when I first joined the Broward Republican Executive Committee back about 18 years ago, I called the Republican Party, local Republican Party, just what you're saying. Took 3 months before they returned the call. I said, wait a minute, this is crazy. How could it take 3 months for somebody to return the call? So now they finally returned the call and said, hey, I'd like to join. So it took them 3 months to get me an application. So that's 6 months. Now, when I got into the organization, I sat down, listened. Not a person came up to say hello to me or anything else. I said, all right, I'm going to the chairman. I'm going to take over the membership committee. And by the way, Mrs. Chairman, I would like to take over the phones. So I picked up the phones, and it was 168 messages that were never returned. So I picked up the phone and I called every person on that list. And, you know, all these years, I've done that. Now, the reason I can get to anybody is because, and I probably could have got to Ron if I really wanted to, but, you know, I wanted to see what was going to happen. And you ask why they don't return the calls, because they're not MAGA people. When the MAGA people got in, they return the calls because they want to get the people in and they want to take over from the other people. Now, our people like Ronna and those people are rhinos, and they want to control everything. So if they don't answer your call and you can never get to them, you can never make change. Am I correct?
Mm-hmm.
So now we're talking all the national committee men and committee women. They've been installed. Also, a lot of them are rhinos. So we're making a lot of changes, and we're putting a lot of pressure on these people by making many, many calls. And we're letting Mike call them individually. We're backing them up with some calls. So just to give you an example, we had a lady down in the Virgin Islands who's the only committee woman that's Black. And her husband called me after she saw me on Steve Bannon show and introduced himself, and we've become friends since then. He's been on our show, we've on our Zoom, so we've let him talk. And it's amazing how the Virgin Islands has to find out a lot of stuff that's going on. So he gave me a lot of the phone numbers where I called and was able to get to them. And we are able to get to more people now. So, you know, just to give an example, like you may call Dan Bongino and try to get him to call back, right? He'll never call back. I met him at one of the events. He said, email me and I'll get back to you. He never did. So just this morning, he said, well, let me see if I can find Dan Bongino's number and his producer. Well, got a hold of one girl. She gave me another girl, got Dan Bongino's producer, called him up, answered the phone. Said, yeah, I'll talk to Dan about seeing if I can get you on. So some people have the knack, I guess, of able to get through, because now I'm getting through to everybody. It doesn't make a difference who it is, because I know enough people where everybody knows somebody's number. So the big thing with getting on is getting producers naturally, because many of these shows have producers. So I didn't give up, and I have a big amount of people that work with me. So I ask everybody, how do you get in touch with this guy, that guy, this guy? We all get a hold of them. Now I have all the national committee men's numbers, so I can get a hold of anybody. And I've been calling them, and a lot of them don't know what precinct strategy is. So that's crazy, because they're the heads of the party. So we talked to each one of them. I got a hold of about 40 so far. And the nice thing is, a lot of them are very smart, and they know what's going on. They just want control. That's the whole key, is control. The MAGA people don't want control. They want to help the country. And if we don't help the country, I mean, we all see what's going on: gas prices, food prices. I went into, you have Publix where you are. Every week, the Publix prices go up 5 cents, 10 cents. It's crazy. And that's why the inflation is coming. I mean, when Biden turned off the oil spigot, that set in motion because everything's tied to oil. If you move the goods, diesel, oil, everything else. I mean, we bring in shirts. We do the flagshirt.com. We're the largest patriotic website in the world. Moving our goods from the Orient was $2,000-3,000 a container. Over the last year, it's $20,000 a container. Well, you got to figure the freight. So, one of the things I want to tell you, if anybody wants to get a hold of me, because what we do is activate the people. And you can get a hold of me by calling 954-318-6902, or go to sstern1054@AOL.com, or go to the flagshirt.com. And the reason why I return all the calls is because I often know if you get one strong person, they can bring you hundreds of strong people. And that's what's happened over the last 2 weeks. We have multiplied our depth of the amount of people that are coming in from the big states of Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Nebraska, many of the important states, Georgia, Arizona, they're stepping out. And I could see the difference. And, it's hard to make all these calls, but I try to get everybody back. The one nice thing is when I get on Steve Bannon show and I say that, I get 500 calls. So when I call these people back, they say, well, I never thought you were going to call me. I said, well, why do you think I go on TV and say that? And that's why people like me, because what I say is what I mean. So when you call these people back, they ask, how do I get involved in the Republican Party, or how to get this? And you often think, why aren't people doing this? Well, all you got to do is go to Google and look up, let's say I'm in Broward, the Broward Republican Party. And now it pops up their website and you get a hold of somebody. And now people will answer. In Florida, we've turned, as you're in Florida, we turned from basically 100,000 more Democrats to 270,000 more Republicans. Well, how do you think that happened? It happened because of precinct strategy, because our people on the ground went door to door. We used to have 100 people in Broward. We have 400 members, and we're getting 200 that want to come in. We just haven't had a meeting in January. Maybe 100 of the 200 will show up because people sign up and they don't show up. But whatever the reason is, they're out of town that week, but they eventually come in. So we have the possibility of getting 600, 700 people in. Now, that presents another problem. How many places can you get that can hold 700 people at a meeting? So, all these things are technical problems that you got to work out. But it's better to have 700 people than 100 people, because if you have 700 people, maybe 20% will work. And that's what's happened. We've got the people on the ground. We went door to door, and in this voting period, you saw what happened with the governor. He got probably the most that anybody's ever gotten, because the people came out. And why did they come out? Because we went door to door. We got them out. We told them what's happening in the country. And Florida is the leading example of all the states about what's happened. You saw the election. You saw how much we won by our senator, a lot of our people all around the state. Every place turned red as far as a county except Broward. So now we have a job in Broward to turn it red. Very difficult because we got so many more Democrats than we do Republicans, but we're signing up 15 Republicans to every Democrat that's being signed up. So that's a good story, and a lot of people are turning because of what's happening. I mean, people can't afford to go out and spend money in the stores, and that's what's going to cause a big recession, because as we see, many of these retail stores are starting to lay off people. Many of the tech people are starting to lay off people. So, and they're raising the interest rates. So when you raise the interest rates, it's tough for people to pay off their debt, because on their credit cards, they're paying 18% interest on their credit card, and people have to borrow money on their credit card. So they get 5 credit cards, and all of a sudden they can't pay anything. So they get turned off on all their credit cards. So this is happening around the country. And, hopefully our Republican House, will do something. I mean, here we got the same problem. And you asked the question before, why are we going to have problems in the House? So we got, the left in the House, we got the middle in the House, and we got the right in the House that are fighting each other as usual. And you saw what happened when they got the House Speaker. So, we are trying as hard as we can to get MAGA people, America first. One of the good things is General Flynn, who I work with, and wonderful man, became a committee man in Sarasota. And to show you how even the Republicans cheat, they knew when he was going out of town with a bunch of his people. So they made the election that day. So we lost that election for a MAGA person in Sarasota, but we won Broward, we won Palm Beach, we won Miami, we won Naples, we won Fort Myers, we won Port Charlotte, we won Orlando. So we're slowly but surely, the fight is happening. We won Tampa, up the state, we won a bunch of them. So Florida is becoming MAGA, more America first, and that's important. Now we're working through the country. We got a guy in Minnesota who I brought together with Mike Lindell. I said, Mike, you're up in Minnesota. Let's take Minnesota back. I said, get together with my guy, David Penn, who's a big tire manufacturer. He's got his own studio now. He's turning as many people as they can into MAGA. And he has a program every Saturday. He gets people together and he's moving more and more people together. So we need patriots to step up. And one of the things that I'm doing, I spoke to General Flynn and I asked him to get me some of his general friends and his colonel friends. We're asking them to step up and run for office. I spoke to General Bodock up in New Hampshire. He's helping me. I have in Weston where I live, was with a general last night. He's a Weston commissioner, and he's trying to get people to run. He was in the Air Force as a brigadier general. Thank God he's near me. He's going to give me 5 or 6 of his friends who are also high-ranking officers. And you say, why am I talking to these people? Well, who is better to run a country or win an office than a general or somebody in the military that's a conservative, high-ranking office? Because they fought for our country. They believe in our country. Today, we have these Democrats who don't believe in a country. You see, they got the border open. I work with Tom Trento, Tom Homan on the border. We had a big event up in 2 big events in Mar-a-Lago. We raised $400,000 and we gave President Trump a big award for all he's done for Israel. And we're going to Israel to speak to some of the generals there to see about their border. And Tom Homan's going to do videos, and we're going to bring them all over Fox and all over every place to let the people know what's happening. Because you would think that everybody knows what's happening about the border, but we're 100% wrong. I speak to Democrats who have no idea that the border is open and 5 million people are coming in. And that's
they don't watch Fox News. They watch everybody else, and they don't cover the story. We've got about a couple of minutes left, and there is one issue I want to bring to your attention and get your feedback on. Throughout this interview, you kept talking about MEGA, Make America Great. Is MEGA dependent upon Donald Trump to survive?
No, I don't think so. Our governor is basically a MAGA guy. I mean, it's America first. I mean, a lot of people are moving off of the president, but a lot of people still love him. You know what I'm saying? He was a great president. It's a movement. You know what I mean? Whether it's President Trump or somebody else, this is a movement of making America great again, of the patriots coming back and trying to take it away from these establishment people who are not democratic themselves. I mean, let's face it, if we want democracy and our own Republicans have a meeting and they do all these things to stop the voting, which is happening in South Dakota, I mean, those are the people that we got to fight. So now we're fighting our Republicans, we're fighting our Democrats. The Democrats are laughing all the way to the polls. And, we talked about people not voting. Charlie Kirk, last week I was watching a show and a lot of people were calling in saying, I'm never voting again because our vote doesn't mean anything and the elections are stolen and blah, blah, blah. And I said to myself, listen, that they're going to laugh, the Democrats, because they're not going to have to cheat anymore. If we don't come out to vote, they don't have to worry. So we got to encourage all our people to come out. And we're working on also, one of the things I want to bring up before we go is that we're talking to people that they don't have to vote on election day. It's silly because if you want to, fine, but we don't want everybody voting on election day because then the lines get so big that, if it's raining in Florida, how many people are going to stand on lines for 3 hours to vote? So that's what happened in Arizona. The machines backed up. People said, look, I got to go home and take care of my kids. I got to go pick up my kids at school, on and on. So we're asking people to vote early also, and also to vote, not on election day all the time, but if you want to vote on election day, sure, it's okay. But imagine if you had half the lines, on election day, it would be a lot easier. We're getting 10 days to vote prior to the election all the time, sometimes 2 months earlier to vote. So there's a lot of time. So anyway, I want to let everybody know if they want to get a hold of me, I'm glad to help them. Go to sstern1054 at AOL, send an email, call me. It'll take maybe a day or two to call back, 954-318-6902. I always say action, action, action. Also, one of the big things is one of our good friends, yournews.com. very important to us today. Yournews.com is a very conservative guy where he has all kind of podcasts on there now. He also presents the news by zip code, by national, by local, and he could be one of the leading guys on it. So it's yournews.com. Just take a look at it. You'll be amazed at what you see. Again, I want to thank you for having me. And, anytime you want me back, I'm glad to help.
Thank you for joining us today, Stephen. And thank you for the work that you're doing to try and save our country.
But like I say, action, action, action. Let's get off your butts and get to work.
Thank you. We'll be right back. Thank you for joining us today, and we'd like to hear your comments or questions. So go to bwradionetwork.com. That's bwradionetwork.com and give us your questions or comments. And thanks for joining us today.